Ashleigh, welcome to the show. Super, super excited to have you here. Wow, there's so much to unpack with your story and what you've been through. So thank you so much for coming and joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. Love what you do and the stories you tell. So thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. And you're like the perfect candidate for this right now. And, sometimes throughout this podcast journey, I bring people on and some people's stories are, not necessarily like crazy adversity stories. Like there's adversity in every story, but once in a while you come across one like this and I'm like, yes, like this is going to be fun. Like, and I know there's, you said something, you're like, your body was your greatest tool, but also your greatest adversity. And I just can't wait for you to unpack this. So, other than the intro that I gave in the beginning, what does your story look like? Where did you start off? What was the path that you took to get you where today?
Okay. Wow. It's been a long journey.
Yeah.
But it started so very young. I started dancing. So my body was, our body is everyone's vehicle, but it was my passion to doing what I loved. Started dancing at 3, 5 hours a day by age 7. It was just my love. And I was 13 years old and literally went from dancing 5 hours a day one day to then waking up in the morning with pain in every joint and muscle. I could hardly move. And that was the first day of 4.5 years where I'd fight for my life. Literally my life changed overnight.
Yeah.
And it just went from there. It got worse and worse where I got so tired. I was so tired. Some days I couldn't even lift a finger, couldn't even utter words, didn't have strength to hold a book. We went all over the country. I had every test, scan known to man. They couldn't figure me out. It was some rare, undiagnosable virus. It was clear I was sick. My organs were shutting down, but no one could figure me out. And this was, even 23 years ago. So even their understanding of viruses and infectious disease has come a long way. But then I was told, I'd make medical history books. I was sent home from some of the top, hospitals to die. Literally said, there's nothing we can do for you. Sent us home. I'll never forget, probably actually one of the most momentous days of my life, because it defined how I would live my life, was I had a doctor come in. He took my mom out of the room to talk about the tests. And I remember when he came in, it was one of those rooms too that was like super white and sterile, when there's like nothing comforting about it. And he came in and rolled up one of those stools, and he gets in front of me and he takes this big breath, which I knew wasn't good, right? And he looked at me and straight out of the gate just said to me, you need to accept that you're not going to live past your teenage years.
Wow.
You're never going to dance again. You're never going to live a normal, active life, never get married, never have children. And the sooner you accept this, the easier it's going to be to come to terms with your reality. Like just like that, which, I can't even begin to describe the emotions, what that felt like. I'm 13 years old, just been told my life is over and that I needed to accept it. And I remember just feeling like the greatest gut punch and looking down and thinking my life's over. But then in the very next moment, I take a deep breath and I look up at him and I said, I'm not going to accept this. And that became the defining moment really of my life back when I was 13 years old, because I decided right then and there that other people's limited vision would not become my own. And if I was going to die, I would fight like hell to live, right? I wasn't going to just accept that this was now my life. And in fact, I had to say this multiple times to doctors. Even they would send in psychologists to talk to me because they said I was living in denial of, my reality. Yeah, really, literally, this would happen. And
what?
I'm so blessed. I was born incredibly stubborn, and a mother that was, because, they were pretty much telling me that I was crazy in terms of not accepting that I would have this terminal illness. And I remember telling to them, I know how sick I am more than you do. Like, I can feel it. And there are nights I literally wouldn't sleep because I was afraid if I gave full control over to my body that I wouldn't wake up. Like, that the only thing keeping me living was my will to live. And so I would tell these doctors and psychologists, I know I'm fighting for my life better than you do. But again, I'm not going to roll over, because I know if I just accept that I'm dying, then I'm dying. Like, I have no chance of surviving this if I've decided that there is no chance, right? So it was a very, very long journey, and literally a slow process, and amazing miracles, finding people that could help me, and really diligent on the food I ate and the nutrition. It was like everything I did was to help my immune system fight this. And it took 4.5 years of literally living between life and death to where I got on the other side of not being in that life and death situation, but really 13 years for everything kind of to work its way out. But after 6 years, I finally went back to dancing, which was, of course, the one thing I was told never I would do. But I was riddled from there with injury after injury after injury, just one after the other. It's like the scars of what I had gone through physically through your adolescence was just like haunting me still. And it didn't matter how well I took care of my body, I kept getting hurt, which was obviously so frustrating. After surviving something like that, to now my body still like being my greatest enemy. It felt like, and even then I injured my back and was told, you're never going to dance again. It was like so deja vu. And it was such a long process, but fighting and keep working. I mean, the human body is amazing. I went from not being able to lift a 1 pound weight to, becoming an elite fitness trainer and going back to dancing in 40 countries all over the world with my husband, and being a finalist on, So You Think You Can Dance, and headlining Broadway, and having all these amazing experiences. To then, 3 years ago, I went into my second hip surgery, and where the first had been a success, and of course hard, I had to learn how to walk again. The second one, which I thought would be the same process, I know how to do this. Like, I know how to start from ground zero again, but everything was different this time, and it failed. And as soon as I started to try to walk again, the pain spread through my whole body. And suddenly I was a chronic pain patient with health issues, and it felt very deja vu, but this time as a mother and a wife and a business owner. And it was a long journey of once again being told to accept I'm a chronic pain patient now. My nervous system had flipped a switch in the surgery, and I just needed to now come to terms. I had a doctor, no kidding, and it took all me not to punch him in the face. Tell me that this happened like 2 years ago. He told me that I was not getting any younger, which I said was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard, because my 3-year-old wasn't getting younger. And that he said that it was only downhill from here. I mean, I cannot make this stuff up, which is mind-boggling. And I told him, of course, the same thing. Like, I don't accept what your view of my life is. This isn't my first rodeo. But I was more ticked off because it wasn't me. It was all the other patients that he said that to that accepted it, And so long story short, I've done every treatment known to man, Eastern, Western, alternative, took me on a journey, like over 200 plus injections of every kind you can imagine. I paid a lot of money for what I would say is personal torture. But finally, long story short, I've been struggling to walk the last 3 years, not even able to go on a bike ride or play on the floor with my daughter, hold a book again, but this from a physical standpoint, not from an energy standpoint. So I went through this journey of being so sick, fighting for my life, fighting through injuries, becoming an elite fitness trainer, professional dancer, having this amazing career, launching a fitness app, like being so passionate about taking care of our bodies. And then I went through this journey the last 3 years of truly, I would say it was harder. Chronic pain is a type of hell. I wouldn't wish upon anyone. There's no escape from it. There's no relief from it. And you don't even sleep well because pain loves the night. So it is just constant hell and torture, and there's not a lot of answers for it, which led me to really diving into the brain and understanding that mind-body connection and learning how to heal the mind-body connection, the nervous system, the brain, and rewire what had been wired from my illness and from the injuries and from pain. And I found a miracle surgery. I had one 6 months ago on my hip, and I have one actually in 10 days on my scapula. But the bottom story, like the bottom line is that literally my body has been my greatest enemy, my greatest hardship, but also my greatest best friend and ally, because we have endured some major battles and wars, and we did it together. And the greatest shift I think I realized was that my body wasn't fighting me, it was fighting for me. And the very thing making my life possible, the human capacity, the soul and the body to overcome insurmountable odds, like really has no limit.
It's amazing. Like, and just like the powerfulness, the spirit that you have when you tell that story as well, you can really feel it. Like when I listen to I highly recommend people to go listen to your episode on your podcast, Body Freedom Radio, is that you tell it in such a way that it's just so authentic and so real that like I was almost in tears listening to it, because I could hear the realness of it, and just like the struggle, yet you've overcome it. And it's just like, it's super inspiring. Like it's amazing to hear that. And what I really want to do is like go back to the beginning for a second and unpack something, because most teenagers at 13 don't have the capacity, the mindset to navigate through something like that. And most would probably accept it because mom or dad told them this, and the doctor, you put the faith in the doctors that you trust to say like what they're saying is the right thing. But in this case, you didn't. How did you develop, like what was installed in you growing up from 0 to 13 that allowed you the mindset to be able to say, no, this isn't this, I'm not doing this? Because most wouldn't have those tools. What was your upbringing like before that?
Gosh, it's funny because I look back now as an adult and I interact with 13-year-olds and I think, oh my gosh, I don't know how I had the fortitude at that time. I definitely know, I believe in God, and I know He was there with me. He helped me. I do believe, we come to earth with certain personality traits. And I know that I was born driven. And I do believe, that dancing was a huge part of that, because I became very disciplined and driven at a young age, and sacrificed. And I know, you would know this and understand this. You sacrifice other things in your life for this passion, because you're driven to succeed at a certain level that requires a lot of you. And so I believe that love, I say all the time that I was blessed with a passion for something that drove me so deeply. And I loved life too. I grew up especially with a mother that just loved life, focused on the positive, was optimistic, but also she was a professor, had gone to law school. She worked very hard too. So I saw like discipline and hard work with still joy and optimism, you know, and a zeal for life. Right. So that helped shape me. And then you took a love for something that was a part of who I was, right? I felt like my body had been born to dance. So when it got taken from me, it was like, what is this body meant for, right? And the one thing they said I would never do again was dance. And I know that that passion was a big driving force, because I was determined to not just live, but do the thing I had felt that I had been created in part to do. And I'm very grateful, because I know not everybody has that type of love for something. And that's why I talk to so many people now about just finding that love for life in and of itself, because I've lost dance the last 3.5 years too. And through that process, I just learned who I was separate from dance, right? It's something that I do, but it's not who I am. Yeah. And I think all of us struggle with that. You start wrapping your identity up.
Put yourself in that box, that persona.
Exactly. And then your whole identity becomes wrapped up in this thing you do. And then what do you do when you lose it? Right?
I talk about this. I've talked about this a lot. This is so true, because when you change that, and then you have all these beliefs and these behaviors that align with that thing that you are, that persona. And then when you shift, there's so much that has to go on for you to become that other thing. And we get so stuck in whatever label we want it to be. And that, and in life, people go through different, we box ourselves, and people do it all the time as, you're that thing. And once that thing is gone, like, who are you? Who's your identity? Because you put everything into like that box. Yeah. And that's where people get depressed. That's where people go, where am I? Who am I? Like, what do I do? But a lot of people don't realize, like, just talking about this, majority of people don't even realize that that is happening. And that's where I think a lot of people get into like toxic habits and that kind of thing, because when something like that so important is taken away from you, people don't have the tools to deal with it. So they go to drink, or they drugs, or whatever that may be, right?
Absolutely. I think, and that's, where I'm so passionate about teaching, even especially youth now, but everyone, there's so much emphasis on what we do and not on who we are. Yeah. And spending just as much time on that inner game. Like, what are my beliefs? Like, how do I change my belief system to where I do believe I can do this and I can be this, which will allow me to then do whatever I want. Right? It's just, we get so caught up in the things that we do. And so that's kind of a long-winded question, but I do believe it was a combination of a passion for something and a passion for life, which my mom taught me. Because if I never danced again, I just wanted to live, and grow and love and learn and be here on this earth, have another opportunity to become the person I wanted to. And then, man, I'm stubborn as hell. My poor husband, you can ask him all about that. And I had grown up, I think because my mom in part was so independent, like meaning she had started a career at a time where women too weren't as encouraged. And my mom,
especially in that field, law, like that would have been completely.
And I remember even, she didn't need to work, right, because of my dad, but she was driven, and she didn't show up any less as my mom. So I think that did help. I was just learned to be a strong, independent woman. So even when this doctor, this expert in his white coat told me, I just said he could shove that where the sun didn't shine. And I decided then that, like, I knew I was in charge of my life if I chose to, and that you could, even though my body had taken so much from me, like the one thing it didn't take was my thoughts,
Yeah.
the emotions I dwelled in, and my choices. And not to say that, I mean, it wasn't hard. I mean, I can't even like put into words, and I had moments where
Of course.
there was not much left other than, but that's when I always say, like, you get in your own face and you look in
Yeah.
the mirror and you're like, you either keep going or you give up.
Yeah.
And people always say to me, like, how'd you do it? And I'm like, well, the alternative was worse. Like,
Yeah.
because if I gave up, there was no chance,
Of
right?
course.
So it's not easy, but you just have to keep reminding yourself, like, amazing things happen when we simply just like don't give up.
Yeah. It's
Don't.
just because you can get through them, right? So okay. So what was the thing they thought it was? I just want to kind of walk us through the journey here. So what did they think this illness was? Were they throwing names around, like
That was
weird,
the thing.
scary names? Like,
I wish they had. The scariest thing of all was no one could figure it out. Did you ever watch the TV show House when it was on? Like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. Okay, I was like one of those people, and House did not exist. My story, where all my tests, like I was clearly dying, organs shutting down. I mean, I looked like a prisoner from Auschwitz, like a
Wow.
concentration camp. I had lost so much of my hair. I was yellow from my liver shutting down,
Wow.
gaunt, just, yeah, my eyes were all yellow. It was just crazy. But I would literally pray before scans and tests that it would be positive, like that, because if we knew what it was, we could have a plan of action, right?
Yeah.
They were doing all the tests and nothing. You could see my body was dying. It was a rare undiagnosable virus, so they could see a virus was attacking my body, but they had no idea like what. And then we found out on top of that I had a rare parasitic infection, that I had the duo. So the virus was attacking my immune system, and the parasitic infection, a lot of people think just makes you have like stomach discomfort, but there's scary parasites out there that kill you.
Yeah.
And mine had essentially taken over the organs in my body and were
Wow.
taking all my nourishment. So it was like a 1-2 punch,
That's
that
freaky
literally
stuff.
took me from healthy to sick overnight, which was so hard because there was no warning
It's
signs.
insane.
Yeah.
What year? Okay, so what year are we talking here?
Like 1996.
Okay. So
Yeah.
how old are you now? Just so we
I'm
have.
36.
Oh, you were the same age, 83?
Oh, 83. Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, woo.
Good age.
So I always like to get context of like what year it was, because like
Yeah.
people, I feel like people in the 90s were just clueless about so many things, like especially now when we look back about health and like
Oh, yeah.
walking around, like the stuff people were recommending. And I guess in one breath it wasn't really their fault, because they were just going off what they know. But the bedside manner of saying that you're going to die is just like, it's it's crazy. Like there isn't a way that they would try and think that
Yeah.
could heal this human that's dying. Like you're just going to give up, like
Yeah.
tell the patient, like our bodies are so resilient. And okay, so you're really sick, you're not feeling well. how did you how did you get through that though? Like I don't, like, especially a virus. Like
Um,
how, like what did you do? This
like
is crazy.
physically, mentally,
Yeah.
all of the
Yeah,
above.
like,
So physically, after 2.5 years, uh, all Western medicine, every top hospital, and they said there was nothing they could do. So my family turned to alternative medicine, which at
oh
that
wow,
time
what was
was
taboo?
very, like voodoo,
Yeah, woo woo.
like
Hippie out on the
yeah,
out
like,
on the mountain.
yeah. Back in 1996, 7, 8, it was.
Yeah.
I come from a family of medical doctors.
Oh, that's,
So that was especially, but again, like my mom was just, I remember her all the times, like, we will not accept this. We will keep
yeah.
fighting. We will try everything. Um, And so during that time too, which is crazy because nutrition wasn't as well understood, but
No.
for me, food became literally like life or death. It was like the food I put in my body either strengthened my immune system or it took from my immune system. And so it was like everything I ate, I had that in mind because I knew I had to give my immune system every fighting chance. So I did that from a nutrition standpoint, which as a teenager is, I mean, it's never easy.
Imagine everybody did that when they ate. Like they really thought about what that was going to do to them.
I say that though, like it shouldn't be. I hope no one ever gets as extreme as me, but really it's truth for each of us.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the quality of our days and our lives really is affected by food, and no one can argue that anymore. Like no one.
People wait till they get sick before they start to eat ginger or like lemon.
Yes.
It's like, why don't you have that all the time?
Yes. And I say all the time, I think people don't even know how good they could feel.
Yeah.
Know?
Especially these people that these pro athletes or these people that can eat, McDonald's and still do well. Imagine what they could do without that crap.
I know.
It's like.
And I know we're all shaped by our own experiences, but to me, sometimes I get really heated because I'm like, you are slapping your life in the face. Like for someone who fought so hard to live, like sometimes I would be like, go to the cancer wings, like go see the people who are fighting to live and you're putting poison. Like you want, and it's like you are more powerful than food. Like we put food on this pedestal of like, I have no power with it. And it's like, do you want food or do you want your life? Like you can tell I get so passionate because so many people are living less than they could be just based on what they're eating.
Yeah.
The links to not just physical, but mental and emotional, like all of our depression, anxiety, and attention disorders, like they keep showing that food has a direct effect. So people are living less than their potential, because of food. And it's getting better, but obviously this is a passion of mine as well.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. I love it too. I mean, it's so important to be responsible with these kind of things, especially with the knowledge out there. And you have to, your body, you got to see you got to test it, right? You got to eliminate things, and then you got to put it back in. And, there's so many things you can do, but people are just not willing to do it. They'd rather sit in that, like, I feel a shitty zone and then just take medication instead of like, or some sort of like trying to get like a magic pill when really
blame your genetics, blame your body, which this is the same principle. It's like you're the victim or you're the victor.
Yeah.
And because I could have given up and I would have been totally valid, right? Because I was dying. I was in the fight of my life. I could have easily said like, okay, this is it,
That's it, yeah.
And we each have these points in our life where that's why, again, I go back to like, sometimes you have to get up in your own face, like, and have a hard talk and be like, listen, you are in charge. Like this is hard as hell. It's not fair, right? Quote fair, that word. But you can't change it, and I'm not saying that you want to go through this, that it's easy, that it's not 1 day, 1 second at a time sometimes, but like you got to get in your own face and be like, what can you control? Okay, you can control the food you put in your mouth. You can control the treatments you do, the thoughts that you dwell in, the emotions that you feed, right? Am I feeding fear and anxiety all the time? Or am I feeding faith and determination by also taking action, like, and it's not easy, but also like the law of life is progress, right? So as long as you're doing things to move yourself forward, then that feeds that confidence. And you just have to remind yourself at the end of the day, like, here's the thing I would say, you can be a victim of circumstances, right? Things happen to each of us that we didn't choose they're not fair. You know, you lost some loved ones, and, you know, people have horrible traumas and things that happen to them that they're a victim of, right? I was a victim of being sick, of having the failed hip surgery, all the injuries. I didn't create that, but it wasn't my fault, but it was my responsibility then to do whatever I could to come out of it.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we like to blame, and then we're not taking accountability for what is in our power. And that's why I'm like, you gotta get in your own face. Like, this level of toughness, like, talk the hardest to yourself. Like, what do you want? Like, it's hard, but you're the only person in your head and in your body. And it's hard, but I think there's a level of grit and resilience that I also fear, especially with women right now, with this self-care movement. And I'm a huge advocate. You have to love yourself. You have to love your body. It's your home on this earth. But you also have to be tough and resilient, to where you have to be accountable to yourself, right? Like, but it's like, well, I'm not taking any action, but I love myself. But it's like, no, love is action, you know? So I think there's that balance. And my mom taught me a lot. Obviously, I keep going back to her.
Your mindset, you can tell, is the reason that you've been able to get through this stuff. Like, I'm a full believer. Just hearing you speak is what allowed you to really, of course, nutrition, of course, the right things, but like, I believe that we don't value the mind as much as we should at healing.
Yes. And that's what I do now, right? I work with clients, because what's amazing, and this is what's incredible, just what you said. The brain, the mind is the brain in action, right? But the brain itself, it doesn't matter who you are, where you came from, your intelligence, your traumas, the mechanisms of the brain are the same for all of us. And we get so caught up again in that story of the identity of who we are, but the brain and its mechanisms and the ability to use it for the mind to change who we are, how we live our lives, the healing, it's unbelievable. And I was so desperate because I wasn't getting any answers. That's what really made me delve into neuroscience and figuring out this mind-body connection and how to communicate from my brain to my nervous system to not be in fight or flight all the time, because my body is a threat to my brain. So it naturally triggered fight or flight all the time, living in stress, right? Which isn't healing. So you have that, and then you have people who just choose stress, and it gets our mind stuck in this survival mode. And what you said is exactly right. If we can learn how to access it and use it, the ability to create and heal from almost anything is truly amazing. But the hard part is that it takes constant work.
That's where I think going for a goal, like, you know, I was a hockey player. I was trying to become a pro hockey player. You were a professional dancer, which I want to talk about the resilience that you need just for that alone. But that belief in the vision of wanting to get somewhere, I feel most people, like, say somebody has to face an injury or illness that you had, but has never had that goal or something like a sport or an achievement, but somebody does have that, like you had it, where you've installed that vision, that to know you want to make it somewhere. I feel like that projection of that professional dance that you wanted to go to, or say, like for myself playing pro hockey, it all works when it comes to believing in beating these illnesses as well, right? Being able to visualize, being able to kind of see that you can get through this shit, right? Like, but I that's why I think sports and having these things young when you're a kid, and having something to achieve and having to have a mindset, develop your mindset, is so important, because later in life you're going to get thrown curveballs, you're going to get punched in the face, and if you don't have the tools to see past that thing in the mindset and the strength, you're screwed,
Yeah.
And this is the thing too, is like, I'm interested in, okay, so you started to heal, right? Obviously, okay, so you use Eastern medicine, you started to eat differently, think differently. So walk us through the path to like your pro dancing, because this is crazy. One minute they say you're going to die, you're never going to dance. And then here you end up, Broadway, Dance with the Stars. So you think we can dance, all this stuff. What was that path like?
A long one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my body, and then I started to do like natural medicine, homeopathic medicine, all these things essentially to help my immune system fight the virus, right? And the parasitic infection. It literally was a journey of being able to sit up on my own, to walk to the bathroom on my own, and to walk a block, slowly but surely. And then when I started to get just energy and reserves back, then in order to dance again, that's what took me to strength training, because I had to build up muscle, which is where my love for fitness comes, because I've experienced firsthand, like I said, not being able to lift a 1 pound weight, to being very strong and feeling capable, and I think that's so empowering in of itself. And so then, and like I said, with the injuries, I had to keep starting over, because every time you've had an injury, if you've experienced it, it's like starting at base one, teaching your muscles how to fire properly and work together. And that's a mental challenge in of itself, because you have to believe it before you see it or experience it, right? And then that fear comes in too, of trusting your body to work again. And that's a good character building process. Like, I wouldn't wish injuries on anyone, but it builds that mental toughness again, right? So then it was always, the thing is as my career went, it was always a fight, because I had to keep rehabbing. Even I went back to ballroom, which is a competitive sport, different than other dancing.
It's crazy.
We're more like ice skaters in that trained to compete. And I'm telling you, this is where the mind also comes in, because I hadn't danced for 6 years. Age 14 to almost 20, that's like your prime time of developing your skill, right? I mean, you're way too late if you're coming back at 20, right? But the amazing thing is that I hadn't physically experienced dance, but I danced in my mind all 6 years, and in my heart. And when I would be doing exams and scans for hours, I would spend that time visualizing myself dancing. And it's weird, because it was instinctual, but what I didn't understand is that I was actually establishing those neural connections. And I know you've read about it, and studies continue to show that the brain doesn't know the difference, right, between something you've actually done and something you've created, when you do it with the right visualization and emotionalizing.
Dr. Joe Dispenza special.
Yes, I love that man. I love him. And it's crazy, because he wasn't talking about this back in 1996, but I remember being in scans for hours and crying, but not out of sadness, but joy, because I was feeling myself dance at such a high level again. And I know, and I didn't even understand it then, but I know that's why I was able to come back so fast after not dancing for 6 years. And not that alone took a lot of courage, because I had to step back in the dance studio when all my friends had 6 years more than me.
Wow.
I left very confident in my ability, and here now, I was 13, 14 when I finally left, and here I'm like almost 20. So now I'm a woman, that itself, that took a big, leap of being humbled, but hungry, So then I was able from there to dance. I met my husband. He's a ballroom dancer. We competed against each other while we did it.
So awesome.
Which added some spice, it was
for
good.
Sure. That's amazing.
Yeah. But we didn't want to confuse the relationship with like a dance partnership. So we got married, and from there we performed in 40 countries all over the world. And I studied political science and history, and he studied business and PR. So we came home, and I was going to go to grad school, and he started working for a financial firm, and we're like, this isn't it.
Yeah.
And we saw something come up to audition for So You Think You Can Dance.
Amazing.
And like, let's just do it. And that season, 15,000 people auditioned.
Wow.
And, yeah, and there's 10 spots for girls and 10 spots for boys. And so we auditioned separately, and just, you know, the stars aligned. I mean, I know we worked really hard, you know, but like I always say, you know, luck shows up when you work really hard, you know.
Yeah.
But we were the first married couple, the only married couple that's ever made the show. And so we competed against each other the whole season with different partners, and went to the final, both of us. So we got to dance together in the final. And then we had an opportunity to headline a Broadway show after that. And,
wow.
You know, but through all this, the amazing thing is right before So You Think You Can Dance, I had another injury and was told I wasn't going to dance anymore.
You're like, no way.
Exactly. And on So You Think You Can Dance, actually in the semifinals, I dislocated my right shoulder and did 8 tears. And I actually had to, but I got voted into the finale. So I had to sign a waiver with Fox Television.
What year was this?
Like 1999. No, 1999, 2009.
2009.
Yeah. So I danced the last week in the finales with 8 tears in my shoulder, which now I can say I had to totally lie at the level of pain I was in.
Wow.
Because they had the girl that went home staying there in case I couldn't dance. And so I had to rehab that injury after the show to then before we could go to Broadway. And then on Broadway, I tore the LCL in my knee and had my first hip issue and had surgery after that on my first hip. And so I think, but the story with that is I think people...
It's crazy.
I know.
It's insane.
I had my times
You're
with God.
one tough cookie. Wow.
Oh my gosh, believe me, I had my times with God going, really? Like, really? You know?
Wow.
But what I think the value in this, and again, I wouldn't wish this on anyone, but I think we often feel like people have a hero story and they overcome something great and then life is good to go, you know? And obviously mine's been a little more extreme, but it's important to know that because life is always going to challenge us in different ways. And again, we always decide what we focus on, but I always say, and we hear that you can grow through it or you can go through it. Like you can survive it or you can thrive through it by becoming a better person through it.
Yeah.
And so it equipped me for more, but I think it just goes to really like not giving up, right? And life is worth to continue to keep fighting, you know? And I wouldn't be here had I just not kept searching and growing and gone within and like, what is the power with my mind? Like, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I wouldn't be where I am. And the tragedy is all of us have been told at some point in our life what our limits are, right? And that we're not good enough or that's not possible for us. And we want to hold on to that as our story. And again, that's not the tragedy because that's all of us have been there, right? To one extreme or another. Like the tragedy to me is that people listen to it.
Yeah.
And they take it as truth, you know, for their life instead of fighting it, instead of thinking, okay, the journey's hard. It might not turn out exactly as I wanted to, but I'm going to grow through this. So now I become the person who can handle and be what I'm supposed to be. And then the doing comes, you know? But I feel like we're coming to the end.
Have you ever, or do you work with athletes on, because there is definitely got a demand for helping people get through that mindset, that block when you're injured, to walk them through visualization. Like, do you work with, I feel like that would be such a valuable thing, like, because a lot of people can't visualize properly.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
athletes, I know when I was playing hockey, we were told visualize being in the moment and all this stuff. But until you hear about somebody that's gone through and actually done that, and like all the injuries you've gone through, and the fact that you went professional after all that, and then you've been injured again, and that obviously works. Like,
Yeah,
visualization works,
it does.
like,
My focus has so much been on like chronic pain and help people, but actually I've talked about my husband about that because
yeah,
it's such a mental game
it
and
is.
it's hard to understand unless you've really been there.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's another avenue I would love
Yeah.
to explore because it's the mental aspect too of not just visualizing it happening again, trusting your body to happen again, but also getting over the fear and anxiety
Mm.
of it happening again with you getting hurt, right? Because the hard thing is that if you are an athlete, you're going to still feel physical pain and discomfort, right? Like we used to take 7-minute ice baths after every show because we did 8 shows a week. Like,
Yeah, that's crazy.
your body hurts, right? And so, but once you've been injured, you get in that loop of fearing pain, right? Because, oh no, am I getting hurt again? Anyway, that's something I would love to do. One thing,
I just
a lot of things, but yeah.
I was like, wow, I wish I had somebody like her, like, just because that's what you need. You need that mindset.
Yeah.
And that's usually what it is. And what I want to talk about as well is, do you use that in visualizing like your career and your business? Do you put yourself into that sort of where you want to be in your career? Do you do the same sort of things?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's key. So they've even shown that by the time we're 35 years old, right, our subconscious mind does 95 to 98% of our thinking, right? That's crazy based on
insane.
the programming, which is kind of ticks you off, right?
Yeah, it's like, I want control.
I know. I remember I was like 34 when I first really started really delving deep in this because I've spent the last few years, and I was like, what? Because I was like right at that cusp, and I was ticked because also I was like, man, so much of our youth affects us, and we're like not at the capacity to comprehend that.
Yeah.
So the reason why I said that is so most people just live by the subconscious programming. So they're not actually really present in their life, right? And taking charge. And we just keep living the same experiences over and over again. And our past is what is holding us, right, to where we are. And that's why the visualization is so important. Because people are waiting all the time to experience it once it's here, right? But it's like you have to take that leap and then trust it'll find its way. You have to, even from an emotional standpoint, you have to give yourself that hope, right, in something greater. But even from a neuroscience standpoint, when you do that and you do it with the emotions attached to it, right, it actually puts new neural networks in the brain, which is amazing. So whether you're someone who loves like The Secret or affirmations, or you're someone who's super scientific, and I'm like a mix of both, I always want to understand why, right? So if you're just the most scientific person, visualization has been proven with neuroscience, neuroplasticity, the nerves that fire together, wired together, right? When you actually do this, you are changing the neural networks of your brain. So it's been proven now by science to be necessary, right? So I absolutely do that. And some days are better than others,
Of course.
But it's, again, like everything, it's a practice, and that's why I always tell people, make sure you're giving as much time to your inner game as your outer game, because your inner game is what determines all the outer experiences we have, right?
So true. So does that go in line with, so let's talk about your bio-emotional healing. That's your business, right?
Yeah.
Is that's all kind of, yeah, explain that to us,
Yeah.
because it's super
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So, my involvement, right? I had I still do. I have a fitness nutrition app that was all based in taking care of your body from a place of love and health, right? Which now has kind of become a big thing, but wasn't as much then, especially for women. But then through my experience the last 3 years with chronic pain, when I just could not find answers and everything I was doing, nothing was working. I was just told my nervous system had flipped a switch, which they say then gives you, fibromyalgia and all these other things. And I just, again, thought, I just don't accept this. I'm not going to be a chronic pain patient the rest of my life. I have too much to do, and I have a child I want to show up for, and, I'm not going to accept this. And so I thought, well, I continue to search for the physical thing that I need, right? Like the right treatment, the right surgery, because it has to be mind, body, and soul, right? We get into danger where it's just physical, or it's just mental, or it's just emotional. Like it has to have all three. So I thought, until I figure out what the physical thing is that needs fixing, right? I'm going to figure out my brain, because I learned what's scary is the more that your nervous system activates pain pathways in a certain way, the more it gets programmed to do it again. So when you've had pain long enough, that's why it becomes so chronic. It actually embeds in your nervous system.
Interesting.
And because your brain, right, cares only about your survival. That's it. Our brains are wired to help us survive. And so when you have a threat, that's why we fight or flight. That's why the caveman could run, right, have fight or flight, be safe from the bear, and then they would recover. So, but when you are sick or have illness, you're living in the threat to your brain, right? So your brain triggers your emotional brain, which is what sends you into fight or flight. And every time you feel that pain or something similar, this cycle happens. And over time, your brain becomes hypervigilant and hypersensitive to that area of your body. So even normal stimuluses become threatening, and the brain creates more pain. And I gotta be so honest, when I started studying this, I was pissed. I was like, okay, I had a failed surgery and it created this pain, but even if I find the right surgery, I now have chronic pain wired into my nervous system that I have to fix. So again, I was like, this sucks. This isn't fair. But then on the flip side, because we can always reframe something, right? I was like, okay, I can be mad, or I can go to work and figure this out and be empowered that when I'm being told there's no solutions, I have this amazing brain that whatever's been wired can be rewired, right? Because the brain is plastic. It's malleable for our whole life. So I started to really study it and make these connections from what I was reading to what I was experiencing now and the past 23 years, right? And the whole impact with, because the brain also perceives physical threats and emotional threats similarly. So whether you have pain, you get more fear, but also if you feel fear, you can actually increase more physical pain. So it's just this vicious loop of pain, thoughts, emotions. The brain feels validated, keeps sending stress hormones, and your body gets stuck because you're trying to heal this body that still has the symptoms that's triggering your brain to protect you. So it's like a whole new level of effort, but it led me to developing this because chronic pain and illness, but let's just go further, chronic anxiety and depression and fear is ruling people's lives, right? And so, like I said, the mechanisms of our brain are each the same. So I started developing this program because you can't just hack the brain. In fact, because I know we live in a world where we want to hack everything, but the brain is smarter than us. And that's why the brain will be like, nope, that's fine, but I know what to do. Thank you. So you have to go through this process of,
Thanks.
yeah, the brain's like, cool, you do that, but I do all these things that I just do and you have no say over, right? Like right now, we're breathing, we're moving. Our brain is doing that for us,
Yeah.
right? So you have to go through this process, I realized, of first accessing the brain, the subconscious mind, where, you know, all these programs are set. Then you have to like coax it to now let go of the old programming so you can start installing new connections, new neurological software. And there's, you know, a long step process, about an 8-week program that takes people. It's really amazing. And what I love about it is, like I said, our brain's mechanisms are all the same. So where people feel like, well, they're smarter than I am. They, you know, they didn't have this trauma, or, you know, they had this background. It's like we were each given this innate intelligence in our brains that we can all access to help our bodies heal, or to help us get out of the cycle of anxiety, the cycle of fear and insecurity even. All of that is part of this loop, from the severity of chronic pain and illness to just the chronic habitual thought loop of insecurity and fear and anxiety. And the brain gets stuck there. And that's why people are like, I know on a conscious level I shouldn't feel this way, but yet I do. And it's understanding that it's the subconscious mind. And that's why, like, just saying affirmations and things isn't enough. It's like pulling out the weed and leaving the root. And it's so empowering, though, to now understand this and help people like truly change their life. Like, not just get tools, but rewire how they think, emotionally respond, and how they act. And it's,
How can this freaking amazing stuff? Like, it just fascinates me. Like, how can somebody on their own start fixing? Like, how does somebody, say someone's got anxiety, or somebody's got some sort of loop pattern? Is there anything that we can do on a daily basis to kind of help that start that engine going again, or get out of that path?
yeah, absolutely. So obviously I have my program, which is like goes super in depth, but I have something you can actually, you can get it to free download. It's the freemindbodyblueprint.com. And it's to help you get out of this loop. So it's something that I call the acronym ACT, and it's to help you get out of that fight or flight, that negative thought loop. The first thing is, so if we go through ACT, and people can go there and download it and have it.
We'll have it in the show notes. We'll have everything.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Because I know not everybody's at that place of being able to do an 8-week program. I want people to have some tools to start now. So just going through each point briefly, the A stands for awareness, because most of us aren't even aware that this subconscious loop is happening. Because it's us, it's what we know, it's familiar to us, it's just who we are. So it's asking us to become another level of awareness of ourselves. So what triggers me to feel anxiety or mistrust? What triggers physical pain in my body? What triggers me feeling insecure? Okay, what is this awareness? Because what am I thinking right now? What am I feeling right now? What are my actions right now? That's part of the subconscious programming that now has become habitual, right? Habits are subconscious programming, meaning they happen without us thinking about them, right? So understanding this is first, because I didn't have this awareness for 23 years of my life. I didn't know that my experiences had helped establish this thought pattern, pain pattern that was now embedded in my nervous system. And thoughts are the same way, right? Just like I told you, the more your nervous system activates pain pathways, the more it does it again. Thoughts are the same way. The more thoughts you think the same over and over again, they now become the thoughts your brain thinks the easiest. So if I've spent a lot of my life thinking anxious thoughts or self-doubt thoughts, I have established those neural connections in my brain, and now those are the thoughts my brain recalls the fastest. So awareness. knowing your triggers. What am I thinking, feeling, saying, acting right now? Then C, connecting to the body. Now, the body stores all our emotions, right? Thoughts are the language of the brain. Emotions are the language of the body. And emotions drive us more than anything else, right? And especially pain, physical or emotional pain. So you've got to connect with your body first with breath and then interrupting the questions. Now, breath, we know, is well established to be beneficial, right? But again, I want to know why. So I started studying it. And
you mean meditation as in breath?
Breath, or just breathing.
Just breathing. Okay.
Breathing in and out, right? Because 80% of the fibers of the vagus nerve, which connect our brain to a lot of the organs in our body, are afferent. So they run from the body up. So we can actually control our arousal system, that fight or flight response, by breath alone. So interrupting the start of that negative thought loop or that physical pain loop with breath, 4 breaths, 4 counts in, 4 counts out. That helps desensitize the brain's triggered threat response. And then you interrupt it with questions. And that's very personal to what your situation is. But one thing everyone can do, because the brain triggers this when it doesn't feel safe, both physically or emotionally. So you just ask your brain, ask yourself, do you feel physically safe? Do you feel emotionally safe? Right? So we're calming down the circuits with the breath, and now we're interrupting that threat response with questions. Then T, take control of thoughts and actions. Okay, because every time we let this run, it further embeds in our system. Every time. So we now have to take control of our thoughts. So what am I thinking? What's the opposite of that? Right? It's like the 4-minute mile. We all know that story, right? Everyone thought it was impossible until somebody did it. And now we have high school students who've done it because it was this new level of belief. So you can do that same thing with your brain. Even before you believe it, start thinking it. So take control of your thoughts and then actions. What is one step you can take? Because what happens is, in this instance, we'll think, okay, get from A to Z, right? Get from anxiety to no anxiety. Well, when you go that big of a distance, your brain will trigger that threat response again, right? Because that's threatening. So you say, what is one small action step I can take right now? And that takes that threat response down. So ACT, ACT. You can download it, read more about it. That's just the baseline. And every time that we can interrupt that negative thought loop, that negative behavior loop, you're not only obviously calming yourself down right then and there, but you're teaching your brain, your body, and your nervous system to react in a different way. Like, it doesn't always need to scream with anxiety or fear or pain to get your attention. So
it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow. Crazy stuff. This brain. It's like, it's amazing. Where can everybody find you? I want to make sure it's all clear for in the show notes. We can check out your work and find you everywhere you are.
Yeah, so I just launched my podcast, Body Freedom Radio. I'm really excited to start that. So you can, subscribe there. I just launched a YouTube channel, Ashleigh Di Lello on YouTube. Thank you. And then my website is ashleighdilello.com. I know you'll show it in the show notes because I spell my name weird. AshleighDiLello.com. You can go to the freemindbodyblueprint.com to get this act we just talked about with the bioemotional healing. On Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Ashleigh Di Lello.
Amazing.
Connect with me everywhere. I want people to know they have no limits, in what they can do and accomplish.
You're a natural for a podcast. Like no doubt. I'm not just saying that. Just the way you like to talk, just like I do. Like, I love to, it's just like, it's fun to be able to express things that you're interested in, and like someone like yourself, it's like a no-brainer to see them have a podcast because you'll do so well with it. Because your energy, people get hooked on that energy, and the fact that you're so passionate about what you're speaking about, that's people will want to come back for more, right? And that's why podcasting is such an amazing thing.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, we live in such a world of information.
Yeah.
You know, and that's amazing. You know, we didn't even, that makes us sound old, but like, right? You had to go to the library, you know?
I didn't have a computer till I was in grade 12.
Oh my gosh. I told someone the other day and they about died. I remember my freshman year in college saying, why do I need an email? You know,
Yeah.
like, what?
Oh, it's
So it's like, it's not new, but yeah, it is.
yeah.
You know?
Well, our generation, we lived through both. We have an interesting generation. We lived through where we didn't have any of it. And then all of a sudden it's like everywhere. Because, you know, graduated 2001. And then from there until 2010, like, I don't know what happened.
Changes.
Like, I don't know what happened.
Now I have a 5-year-old who thinks it's just totally normal to call someone on my phone and talk to them face to face through video. You know?
That used to seem like the craziest thing.
I know. Back to the future, you know?
Oh my.
But yes. So thank you. I'm excited for this year, and I just want to my chronic pain coaching program. So I have 2 programs. One for chronic pain and health issues, and then just people with anxiety, fear, mistrust, insecurity. And one of my themes has always been, you know, turning pain into purpose.
Amazing.
And I am ready to fly with this purpose because there's too many people suffering unnecessarily. You know?
Yeah, it's inspiring. Very inspiring. I'll just end it with one last question here. What is, obviously, I mean, you've been taught many lessons here, but what is one lesson that adversity has taught you for like that main thing?
Yes, I know. That's a heavy one, huh? So I'll say it by first saying something that's truth, but once pissed me off. When people would say to me when I was dying, they'd be like, isn't this a gift? You know, and I'd want to hit them in the face because I'd be like, too, like, you're not going through this, you know? But I understand it was coming from a good place, right? Yeah. So turn that on its head. Where that stands true is that it's not what you're going through. That's the gift. That's hard as hell. That is push you to the depths of your limits. That is some nights you're barely holding on. It's 1 second at a time. It's the opportunity to come face to face with who you are, who you will become, and what you're going to make of your life. That's the gift, right? The hard is the hard, but if we can choose to see it from that standpoint, then that's the greatest gift adversity gives us in our life, because it truly then does turn our pain into purpose. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. This is so much fun. And like, it's crazy. Like the time just flies. It's insane. Well, thank you. Same with you. I mean, and I just love, again, this platform that allows us to connect with people that we never would have crossed paths, you know, otherwise. You know, for sure. Amazing. And we'll make sure everything is clear for people to come check you out. And yeah, this was really great. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Lance. Appreciate it. Love what you're doing. Well, thank you very much. Ashleigh Di Lello, everybody.